The great hull of the galactic Concorde stretched for miles in every direction. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness, and strange lights floated in the air like captured stars. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood alone on a small platform in the center. Surrounded by 12 towering seats where the elder races of the galaxy watched him with cold, ancient eyes. Daniel was 43 years old. He had spent 20 years learning alien languages, customs, and politics. He had believed, truly believed, that humanity could find its place among the stars through diplomacy and patience. Now, standing in this hall, he felt like a child called before a court of giants. The Cathari representative spoke first. It was an insectoid creature, 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and eyes that reflected no light. Its voice clicked and buzzed through the translation device. The Concorde has reached a decision regarding the human species. Daniel kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing fear to these beings was like bleeding in water full of sharks. Humanity has expanded to 17 star systems in less than 300 years, the Cathari continued. Your population grows without control. Your ships travel further each decade. Your scientists ask questions that should not be asked. This cannot continue. A crystalline being shifted in its seat. This was the Voron ambassador, a creature made of living glass that sang when it moved. We do not wish conflict with your kind, it said, and its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. But the Concorde has protected this galaxy for 100,000 years. We have seen species like yours before. They rise fast, burn bright, and destroy everything around them before they destroy themselves. Daniel wanted to argue. He wanted to list all the good humanity had done, the colonies they had built, the trade they had brought, the diseases they had cured. But he knew it would not matter. These beings had made their decision long before he entered this hall. The Sindari representative floated forward. It had no true body, just a shape made of pale light and shadow. The Sindari were telepaths, and when this one spoke, Daniel felt the words inside his skull as much as he heard them with his ears. You will surrender all military vessels. You will accept population controls. You will hold no voting rights in this assembly. You will be watched, guided, and contained. This is not punishment. This is protection, for you and for all others. Daniel's hands shook slightly. He pressed them against his sides. And if we refuse? The hall went quiet. The Cathari made a sound that might have been laughter. Then we will take corrective action. Your species is young and clever, but you have 17 worlds. We have 10,000. Your fleet numbers 300 ships. Ours numbers 3 million. This is not a negotiation, Ambassador. This is a notification. You have one of your solar years to comply. Daniel returned to Earth on a ship that felt too small and too slow. He sat alone in his cabin for most of the journey, staring at the stars that humans had dreamed about for thousands of years. Those stars did not belong to humanity. They never had. The elder races had simply allowed humans to borrow them for a while. When he landed, he went straight to the Emergency Council. President Nathan Cole sat at the head of a long table, his face gray with stress. Admiral Lisa Morgan stood near the window, her arms crossed, her jaw tight with anger. Around them sat generals, scientists, and politicians, all speaking at once. We can fight, Admiral Morgan said. Our ships are faster. Our weapons are newer. We can make them pay for every system they try to take. And then what? Asked a senator whose name Daniel could not remember. They have 3 million ships. We have 300. The math does not work. The math never works against empires, Morgan replied. But empires can bleed. They can get tired. They can decide that the cost is too high. President Cole raised his hand, and the room went silent. Daniel, he said, you were there. You saw them. What do you think? Daniel took a long breath. I think they are afraid of us, he said. Not because we are strong, but because we are unpredictable. They have ruled this galaxy for 100,000 years. They have seen everything, done everything, controlled everything. And then we appeared, and we did not follow their rules. We grew too fast. We asked too many questions. We did not bow low enough. He paused. They are not evil. They are just old. And old things fear change more than anything else. So we cannot win, Cole said. Not in a war. Not in negotiation. Not in any game they control. The room fell into heavy silence. Then a door opened, and a man walked in that Daniel did not recognize. He was old, maybe 70, with white hair and eyes that seemed to look through walls. He wore a simple gray coat and carried no papers or devices. This is Dr. Kevin Brooks, President Cole said. He has been working on something classified. Something that might give us another option. Dr. Brooks did not smile or shake hands. He simply looked at each person in the room, one by one, as if measuring them. Then he spoke in a voice that was soft, but carried to every corner. I have spent 30 years studying the fabric of space itself, he said. Not how to travel through it, but how to fold it. How to create spaces that exist beside our universe, but are not part of it. Pockets, dimensions, places that cannot be seen, cannot be reached, cannot be touched by anyone who does not know they exist. Admiral Morgan frowned. You are talking about hiding. I am talking about disappearing, Brooks replied. Completely, utterly. We give them what they want. We pull back to Earth. We let them think they have won. And then, slowly, quietly, we move everything that matters into places they cannot find. Our people, our cities, our ships, our future. He looked at President Cole. They want us contained. Let us be contained. Let us be so contained that we vanish from their sight entirely. And then, in the darkness they cannot see, we grow. President Cole stood up slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the city below, at the millions of people who did not yet know that their world had changed forever. Then he turned back to the room. Prepare the message, he said. Tell the Concord we accept their terms. All of them. Admiral Morgan's face went pale. Sir, you cannot be serious. I am completely serious, Cole replied. We are going to give them exactly what they asked for. And then we are going to become something they never imagined. He looked at Dr. Brooks. How long do you need? 5 years to build the foundation. 10 to make it permanent. 20 to make it unstoppable. Cole nodded. Then we have work to do. And the galaxy will never see us do it. The message went out the next day. Humanity accepted. Humanity surrendered. Humanity retreated. And in the shadows, something new began to grow. Commander Samantha Wells stood on a hill overlooking New Eden, the largest city on Kepler 442b. 2 million people had built their lives here over 3 generations. Children had been born here who had never seen Earth, who called this alien sky with its orange sun their home. Now those same children walked in long lines toward transport ships, carrying bags and toys and confused expressions. A little girl stopped near Samantha and looked up at her with wide eyes. Why do we have to leave? She asked. Did we do something wrong? Samantha knelt down to meet the girl's eyes. She wanted to explain about politics and empires and fear, but the girl was maybe 6 years old. There were no words that would make sense. Sometimes, Samantha said carefully, we have to leave a place we love so we can find a place that is even better. It does not mean we did anything wrong. It just means we are going somewhere new. The girl thought about this for a moment. Then she nodded and walked on, holding her mother's hand. Samantha watched her go. Then she looked up at the sky, where Cathari scout ships circled like vultures, watching, recording, making sure the humans kept their promise. She wanted to spit at them. She wanted to scream. But she didn't either. She simply turned and walked back to her duties, because that was what soldiers did when the world fell apart around them, across the galaxy. The same scene repeated on 16 other worlds. Humans packed their lives into boxes and crates. They said goodbye to homes they had built with their own hands. They boarded ships and watched through windows as their cities grew smaller and smaller until they disappeared. The elder races observed everything with satisfaction. Their scouts reported that the humans were obeying. The colonies were emptying. The threat was ending. What the scouts did not see was what happened next. On Earth, in facilities buried miles underground, Dr. Kevin Brooks worked without sleep. His hair had gone completely white in the past 6 months, and his hands shook when he held his coffee. But his mind was sharper than ever. Around him, thousands of scientists and engineers built machines that had never existed before. The principle was simple to explain, but almost impossible to achieve. Space was not flat. It was folded and bent and layered in ways that normal physics could barely describe. Between those layers were gaps, tiny spaces where nothing existed. Dr. Brooks had found a way to make those gaps bigger. Much bigger. Big enough to hold a city. Big enough to hold a world. "The first fold is stable," reported his assistant, a young woman named Amanda Price. She was barely 30, but she understood the math better than anyone except Brooks himself. "We moved the test structure through 6 hours ago. It is intact. Power is holding. The readings match our predictions." Brooks nodded slowly. "How big can we go?" "The math says there is no limit. The bigger the fold, the more energy we need to create it. But once it exists, it maintains itself. We could theoretically create a space the size of a solar system, then start planning for that. We are not just hiding some equipment. We are moving a civilization." Above ground, the world watched humanity shrink. News broadcasts from alien networks showed the last human ships leaving distant systems. Commentators from a dozen species discussed what had gone wrong with the human experiment, why the young race had failed so quickly. What lessons could be learned? President Nathan Cole gave speeches about acceptance and peace. He spoke of humanity finding its place within the Concord's rules. He smiled and nodded and played the part of a broken leader accepting defeat. And every night, he went underground and reviewed the progress of Project Elsewhere. The first civilian transfers began 8 months after the surrender. A neighborhood in northern Canada was chosen because it was remote and the winter made aerial observation difficult. 3,000 people were told they were being relocated to a new settlement. They boarded buses that took them to a facility in the mountains. They walked through a door that looked like a simple metal frame. On the other side, they found a valley that did not exist on any map. The sky was a soft purple color, and 2 small suns hung in the distance. The air was fresh and clean. Buildings were already rising in the distance, built by construction crews that had crossed over weeks before. A woman named Grace Patterson stepped through with her 2 sons. She stopped and stared at the impossible landscape. "Where are we?" she whispered. A guide smiled at her. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they cannot find. Welcome to Fold 1. The transfers accelerated over the following years. Whole cities were moved piece by piece. Factories were rebuilt. Farms were planted. Ships were constructed in hidden shipyards that floated in purple skies. The population of visible Earth declined, while the population of the Fold dimensions grew by millions each month. The Concorde sent observers to Earth orbit. They counted heads. They monitored broadcasts. They saw a planet of 12 billion people crammed into limited space. Their fleet reduced to a handful of patrol vessels. Their colonies gone. Their expansion ended. They reported that the human problem had been solved. Commander Samantha Wells was one of the last to cross over. She had stayed to oversee the final evacuations, to make sure no one was left behind. On her last night on Earth, she stood on a beach and watched the real moon rise over the real ocean. She had been born on a colony world and had never seen Earth's moon until she was 30 years old. Now she was leaving it forever. Admiral Lisa Morgan found her there. The Admiral was older now, her hair gray, her face lined with years of stress. But her eyes still burned with the same fire they always had. "It is time," Morgan said. "I know." Samantha did not move. "Do you think they will ever realize what we did?" "Eventually. When we want them to?" Morgan looked up at the stars. "They think they buried us. They do not understand that you cannot bury seeds without helping them grow." Samantha nodded slowly. Then she turned and walked away from the ocean, away from the moon, away from everything humanity had known. She walked through a door and into a universe that the galaxy would never find. Behind her, the door closed. And from the outside, it looked like nothing at all. In the Concord assembly, the Gathari representative made an announcement. "The human situation is resolved. They have complied with all requirements. They are contained and controlled. This matter is closed." The other races agreed. The matter was closed. Humanity was finished. In the full dimensions, 43 million humans looked up at alien skies and began building something new. They built schools and hospitals and research centers. They built ships that could slip between dimensions like ghosts. They built weapons they hoped they would never need and shields that nothing could break. And they waited, patiently, quietly, invisibly, because the elder races had taught them one lesson very well. The universe belonged to those who could wait the longest. Humanity had learned to wait. 15 years had passed since the Great Retreat. In the visible universe, humanity had become a footnote. Young aliens learned about them in history classes as an example of what happened when a species grew too fast and too proud. The elder races had moved on to other concerns, other conflicts, other games of power that had nothing to do with the small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. Dr. Kevin Brooks sat in a garden that should not exist. Flowers that had never grown on Earth bloomed around him in colors that had no names. Above him, a sky of deep purple stretched to horizons that curved slightly upward instead of down. He was 87 years old now, his body kept alive by medical technology that the Concorde had never imagined. And his mind was still sharp enough to appreciate what humanity had built. Amanda Price walked toward him across the grass. She was 45 now, the lead scientist of the entire Fold Dimension project. She carried a tablet that displayed numbers and charts that would have seemed like magic to the people of Earth just 2 decades ago. "The 17th fold is complete," she said, sitting down beside him. "Population transfer is finished. Total human population across all dimensions, 43 billion. Brooks smiled softly. 43 billion. When we started, I thought we might save a few million. Enough to preserve our species. Enough to keep the flame burning." He shook his head slowly. "I never imagined this." "You gave us the door," Amanda said. "We just kept walking through it." In orbit around Fold 7, Captain Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the stealth vessel Quiet Thunder. It was one of 3,000 ships in the Shadow Fleet, vessels designed to slip between dimensions without being detected. They could enter normal space, observe for hours, and vanish without leaving a trace. "Report," Mitchell said to his crew. His sensor officer, a young man named Peter Collins, pulled up a display. Cathari battle group moving through Sector 9. 47 warships. They are heading toward the Varam border. Another border dispute? Looks like it. 3rd one this year. The Concorde is falling apart, Captain. They spent so long worrying about us that they forgot to worry about each other. Mitchell nodded. The irony was not lost on him. The elder races had forced humanity into hiding because they feared what humans might become. Now, without that common enemy to unite them, the ancient alliances were crumbling. The Githari and Varan had been rivals for 50,000 years. The Sindari trusted no one. The smaller races were growing restless under the weight of empires that treated them like children. "Continue observation," Mitchell ordered. "Log everything. We watch. We do not interfere." Not yet. The quiet thunder slipped back into fold space and vanished from the universe, on the hidden world of New Promise, the largest human city in the fold dimensions. A young engineer named Derek Palmer was about to change everything. He worked in a research facility that specialized in dimensional physics, the science of understanding how fold space connected to normal space. For 3 years, he had been studying the barriers between dimensions, trying to understand their limits. Today, he found something impossible. "It works," he whispered, staring at his screens. "It actually works." His supervisor, Dr. Rebecca Santos, looked up from her own work. "What works?" Derek turned to face her, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and fear. "I found a way to project matter from fold space into normal space. Instantaneously. No ship required. No portal. We can send anything, anywhere, at any time." Rebecca went pale. "That is not possible. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical." "That is what I thought too. But I found a shortcut. The barriers between dimensions are not solid. They are more like membranes. If you know the right frequency, the right resonance, you can push through them without breaking them. The energy cost is almost nothing." Rebecca sat down slowly. Her mind raced through the implications. With this technology, humanity could place a ship in orbit around any planet in the galaxy without warning. They could send supplies to any location. They could send weapons. They could appear anywhere and vanish just as quickly. "Does anyone else know about this?" she asked. "Not yet. I wanted to be sure before I reported it. Keep it that way. This goes directly to the council. No one else." 3 days later, Derek Palmer stood before the Hidden Council, the governing body of Fold Humanity. President Maria Santos, a distant relative of his supervisor, listened as he explained his discovery. Admiral Lisa Morgan, now 82 years old, but still commanding the Shadow Fleet, leaned forward with intense interest. Scientists and military leaders asked questions he could barely answer fast enough. When he finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Admiral Morgan spoke first. "How soon can this be operational?" 6 months for small-scale projection. A year for anything larger than a shuttle. 2 years for full fleet deployment. Morgan turned to President Santos. "This changes everything. We are no longer just hiding. We are everywhere. We can strike anywhere, support anyone, stop anything. Without warning. Without detection." President Santos raised her hand for silence. "We did not build this civilization to become conquerors. We built it to survive. This technology gives us options, not obligations. We will develop it carefully. We will test it thoroughly. And we will use it only when absolutely necessary." Far away, in normal space, the Sindarisirs were having nightmares. Their telepathic abilities let them see glimpses of possible futures, threads of probability that stretched across time. For thousands of years, those threads had been clear and predictable. The galaxy followed patterns. Empires rose and fell in cycles. Nothing truly surprised them, but now the threads were breaking. There were holes in the future, dark spaces where nothing existed. The seers reached toward those spaces and found only silence. Something was out there, something vast and growing, and they could not see it at all. The Sindari ambassador brought his concerns to the Concord assembly. "There's a void in our visions," he said, his form flickering with distress. "Something is hiding from us. Something we cannot perceive." The Cathari representative clicked with impatience. "Your visions are not science. They are guesswork dressed in mysticism. The galaxy is stable. The humans are contained. There is nothing hiding from anyone." "You are wrong," the Sindari replied. "Something is coming. Something we created. And we will not see it until it is too late." The assembly dismissed his warnings. They had more important matters to discuss, like border disputes and trade agreements and the endless small conflicts that kept the galaxy turning dot in the fold dimensions. 43 billion humans continued their work. They built cities and ships and futures. They raised children who had never known fear of the elder races. They trained soldiers who could appear from nowhere and vanish into nothing. They developed technologies that would have seemed like miracles to their ancestors. And they remembered. They remembered the ultimatum. They remembered the fear. They remembered being told they were too young, too fast, too dangerous to be trusted. They remembered everything. And one day, they would show the galaxy exactly what humanity had become. But not yet. Not yet. Patience was the greatest weapon of all, and humanity had learned to wield it perfectly. The war between the Cathari Empire and the Varan Collective began over a nebula that neither species truly needed. It was a matter of pride, of ancient grudges, of empires that had grown so old they had forgotten how to do anything except compete. The first shots were fired on a Tuesday, and by Wednesday, 3 star systems were burning. The Galactic Concord called emergency sessions. Ambassadors made speeches about peace and restraint. None of it mattered. The Cathari and Varan had been waiting for this fight for 10,000 years. And nothing would stop them now. Admiral Lisa Morgan watched the war unfold from a hidden observation post in Fold space. She was 92 years old, her body supported by machines that monitored her heart and fed medicine into her blood. But her mind was still sharp, and her eyes still held the same fire that had burned in them when she was a young captain fighting pirates in the outer colonies. Casualty projections? She asked. Lieutenant Christopher Grant, her aide, pulled up the data. If the war follows historical patterns, we are looking at roughly 4 billion deaths over the next 50 years. Most of them will be civilians on border worlds. Neither empire cares much about collateral damage. Morgan nodded slowly. She had seen the elder race's idea of war before. They did not fight like humans, with quick strikes and decisive battles. They fought like glaciers, grinding against each other for decades, crushing everything between them. And the other species? Staying neutral mostly. The Sindari are in isolation. The smaller races are terrified. Nobody wants to get between 2 empires this size. Morgan turned to look at a screen showing the Fold Dimension fleet. 3,000 ships waited in formation, each one capable of appearing anywhere in the galaxy without warning. In orbit around the hidden worlds, construction yards worked around the clock, building more ships, more weapons, more tools of a power that the galaxy could not imagine. "Send word to President Santos," Morgan said. "Tell her I think it is time. The galaxy is about to tear itself apart. If we are ever going to act, it should be now." President Maria Santos received the message in her office on New Promise. She was 63 years old, elected 5 years ago on a platform of careful engagement with the outside galaxy. She had always known this moment would come. She had hoped it would come later. She called an emergency meeting of the Hidden Council. The debate lasted 6 hours. Some argued for continued isolation. Others wanted full intervention. Some suggested helping one side to weaken both empires. The arguments went in circles until Santos raised her hand for silence. "We did not build this civilization to hide forever," she said. We built it to survive long enough to make a difference. The elder races gave us an ultimatum because they were afraid of what we might become. Now we have become it. The question is not whether we act. The question is how. Admiral Morgan spoke next, her voice carried across fold space by quantum links that could not be intercepted. I propose a demonstration. Not an attack. Not an invasion. A simple show of what we can do. We stop this war without firing a single shot. We show them that the rules have changed. How? Asked a council member. Derek Palmer's technology. We project disabling fields directly onto their ships. Every warship in both fleets loses power at the same moment. No deaths, no damage, just silence. And then we speak. The council voted. The decision was not unanimous, but it was clear. Humanity would reveal itself. 3 days later, the Cathari Grand Fleet engaged the Varan Battle Collective in the neutral space between their empires. 400 warships on each side, enough firepower to crack planets. The commanders gave their orders. Weapons powered up. Shields activated . And then everything stopped. Every ship in both fleets went dark. Weapons offline. Engines dead. Life support running on emergency backups. 800 vessels drifted helplessly in the void. Their crews shouting in confusion and fear. On every screen, in every ship, a single message appeared in both Cathari and Varan script. This conflict is over. The commanders tried to restore power. Their engineers tore open access panels and ran diagnostics. Nothing worked. The ships were not damaged. They were simply off. In the Concord assembly. Panic erupted. The Cathari ambassador demanded to know who had attacked their fleet. The Varan ambassador accused the Cathari of treachery. The Sundari representative sat in terrified silence because he knew. Somehow he knew. Then every communication device in the galaxy activated at once. Every screen, every speaker, every neural link. A human woman appeared, her face calm, her voice clear. My name is Maria Santos. I am the president of the Hidden Confederation of Humanity. The assembly went absolutely silent. 20 years ago, your Concord gave humanity an ultimatum. You told us to surrender our ships, accept your control, and submit to your rule. We accepted your terms. We retreated to Earth. We let you believe we were broken. She paused, and something like a smile crossed her face. We were not broken. We were building. Images appeared beside her. Cities floating in purple skies. Fleets of ships that numbered in the thousands. Populations that counted in the billions. Technology that made Concord science look like children's toys. We are no longer the young species begging for a seat at your table. We are something else entirely. Something you cannot find, cannot fight, and cannot stop. We have disabled your weapons today as a demonstration, not as an attack. Tomorrow, your ships will function again. Your crews are unharmed. This is not war. This is a message. Admiral Morgan stood beside her now, old but unbowed. We watched you for 20 years, Morgan said. We learned your weaknesses, your secrets, your fears. We know where your hidden bases are. We know your command codes. We know everything. And we chose not to attack. We chose not to conquer. We chose to wait. President Santos spoke again. But our patience has limits. This war between the Cathari and Varan will kill billions of innocents. We will not allow it. This conflict ends today. If either side fires another shot, we will disable your entire military infrastructure permanently. Not for a day, forever. She leaned forward slightly, and her voice hardened. The next time you raise your hand against any species, the next time you issue ultimatums to the weak, the next time you treat the galaxy as your property, to do with as you please, we will be watching. And we will act, not with threats, not with warnings, simply with action. You will wake up one morning and find that your power is gone, and you will never know how we did it. The transmission ended. The screens went dark, and the galaxy was silent. In the Cathari flagship, Commander Zethkar stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then he turned to his crew. "Restore power. Set course for home, sir," his first officer asked. "The battle is over." Zethkar clicked his mandibles in something that might have been resignation. The battle is over. The war is over. Everything is over. We just did not know it until now. Across the void, the Voron flagship made the same decision. 800 ships slowly powered back to life, their weapons untouched but their crews shaken to their cores. They turned away from each other and headed home. In the full dimensions, humanity watched and waited. They did not celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. They had revealed themselves to the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same. Admiral Morgan sat down heavily in her chair. Lieutenant Grant brought her water, and she drank it slowly. "Do you think they will listen?" Grant asked. Morgan looked at the screens showing the retreating fleets. "For now, fear is a powerful teacher, but fear fades. Eventually, they will test us again." She smiled grimly. "And when they do, we will be ready. We will always be ready. That is what they taught us, after all. They just did not expect us to learn so well." The galaxy had changed in a single moment. The rules that had governed it for 100,000 years were gone. A new power had emerged from nowhere, from nothing, from the empty spaces between stars. And humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Concord did not survive the revelation. Within a year of humanity's announcement, the ancient alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 100,000 years had shattered into pieces. The Cathari withdrew entirely, retreating to their core systems and sealing their borders. The Voron collective fragmented into a dozen smaller factions, each claiming to be the true inheritors of their crystalline legacy. The Sindari vanished into isolation, their seers driven to madness by their attempts to see into fold space. The smaller species, those who had lived under the shadow of the elder races for millennia, began to stir. They had watched the great empires humiliated by a species they had been taught to despise. They had seen the mighty brought low by the weak, and they began to wonder what else they had been lied to about. Ambassador Daniel Carter returned to Villa Prime 1 year after President Santos's broadcast. He was 73 now, his hair white, his face lined with decades of worry and work. But he walked with the confidence of a man who finally understood his purpose. The great hall of the former Concord Assembly was nearly empty. Only 4 species had sent representatives. The towering seats of the elder races sat vacant, gathering dust. The lights that had once floated like captured stars were dim and flickering. Daniel stood on the same platform, where he had received the ultimatum decades ago. He looked around at the remnants of an empire that had thought itself eternal. "Thank you for coming," he said simply. The Voron representative, a young crystalline being named Kiro, spoke first. Her voice chimed with uncertainty. "Why are we here, Ambassador? What does humanity want from us?" Daniel smiled. It was the same smile he had worn when he first came to this chamber as a nervous young diplomat. But now it carried the weight of everything humanity had become. "That is a fair question. The galaxy has spent the past year wondering the same thing. You have watched us appear from nowhere, stop your greatest war, and vanish again. You have sent ships to find us and found nothing. You have tried to break our communications and failed. You have had a year to imagine the worst." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "But we are not here to rule you. We are not here to punish you. We are not here to demand tribute or submission or anything else the elder races might have wanted. He spread his hands wide. We are here to offer you something they never did. A choice. A Mendari diplomat, representing one of the smaller species that had been oppressed for generations, leaned forward. His name was Tovis, and his people had dreamed of freedom for centuries. What kind of choice? A new galactic assembly, Daniel replied. One where every species, young or old, powerful or weak, has an equal voice. 1 vote per species. No vetoes. No special privileges. No ultimatums. He looked at each of the representatives in turn. Humanity will provide protection for any world that joins. We will share technology freely. Medical advances that can extend your lives. Energy systems that will never run out. The knowledge we have gained in 20 years of development without restriction. Kirill's crystalline body sang with surprise. Why would you do this? You could rule the galaxy. Your technology is beyond anything we possess. Why share it? Why give others power when you could keep it for yourselves? Daniel walked slowly across the platform, his footsteps echoing in the empty hall. Because we remember what it was like to be where you are now. 20 years ago, I stood in this very chamber and was told that my species was too young, too dangerous, too unpredictable to be trusted. We were given no voice, no rights, no future except what the elder races allowed us. And it was wrong. Not because we were special, because every species deserves the chance to grow, to learn, to become whatever they have the potential to become. He stopped and faced them directly. The Concord failed because it was built on fear. Fear of change. Fear of the young. Fear of anything different. That fear turned to control, and control turned to stagnation, and stagnation turned to collapse. We have no interest in repeating their mistakes. We want partners, not subjects. Allies, not servants. Tovis spoke again, his voice trembling with emotion. My people have waited 5,000 years for someone to say those words. We thought they would never come. They came late, Daniel admitted. They should have come sooner. The elder races should have built a galaxy where they were never necessary. But they did not. So here we are. He smiled gently. Better late than never. The negotiations took months. Species that had never spoken to each other found themselves sharing tables and arguments and, eventually, understanding. The fold dimensions opened, just slightly, allowing representatives to see what humanity had built. They walked through cities that floated in impossible skies. They saw children playing in parks beneath purple suns. They met humans who welcomed them with open arms and asked nothing in return except friendship. The new galactic assembly was formed 1 year later. 47 species signed the founding charter. More joined each month. Humanity did not lead the assembly, not officially. They held 1 vote like everyone else. But everyone knew who had made it possible. Everyone knew who watched from the spaces between spaces, ready to act if the old patterns returned. On the anniversary of the Assembly's founding, President Maria Santos gave a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. 100,000 years ago, the first star-faring species looked up at the universe and saw infinite possibility. They built empires that spanned galaxies. They developed technologies that seemed like magic. They conquered, controlled, and counted themselves masters of all they surveyed. She paused, and somewhere along the way, they forgot why they had reached for the stars in the first place. Not for power, not for control, but for wonder, for the simple joy of discovery, for the dream that there might be others out there, different from themselves, but equally deserving of the chance to exist. She looked directly into the camera, her eyes bright with conviction. Humanity did not build our hidden civilization to escape the galaxy. We built it to survive long enough to return with something the elder races had lost. Not weapons, not ships, not technology, hope. The hope that the universe is big enough for everyone. The hope that difference is not a threat but a gift. The hope that the future is not written by the powerful alone, but by all who have the courage to dream of something better. In the fold dimensions, 50 billion humans watched her speak. Some had been born there, knowing no other home. Others remembered Earth, remembered the fear, remembered the Great Retreat. All of them felt something shift in their hearts. They were no longer refugees. They were no longer hiding. They were something new. Something the galaxy had never seen. Admiral Lisa Morgan died peacefully 3 months after the Assembly's founding. She was 94 years old, and she went in her sleep, surrounded by officers who had served with her for decades. Her last words were reported to be, "We did it. We actually did it." Commander Samantha Wells, now a grandmother herself, attended the memorial. She stood before the honor guard and spoke of a woman who had refused to surrender when surrender seemed like the only option. A woman who had believed in humanity when humanity had stopped believing in itself. A woman who had taught them all that patience was not weakness. It was strength that had learned to wait. Dr. Kevin Brooks had died years before, but his legacy lived on in every fold dimension, every impossible sky, every world that existed in the spaces between spaces. Amanda Price continued his work, pushing the boundaries of dimensional physics, finding new ways to grow and expand and explore. And humanity continued to watch. They did not rule the galaxy. They did not want to. But they were everywhere, in every shadow, behind every star. Silent guardians who had learned the hardest lesson the universe had to teach. True power was not the ability to destroy. It was the ability to protect, to wait, to act only when action mattered, to vanish when presence would only cause harm. The elder races had wanted humanity contained. They had gotten their wish, in a way. Humanity was contained. In dimensions they could not find. In technology they could not understand. In a patience they could not match. The universe was vast and old and full of wonders. And somewhere in the spaces between spaces, humanity continued to grow, quietly, invisibly, forever ready, not as conquerors, not as rulers. Simply as guardians of a future that belonged to everyone. And the galaxy, for the first time in 100,000 years, began to dream again.